We want to begin in New York, where the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson has pleaded not guilty to state murder and terror charges in New York. Here's Luigi Mangione just about an hour ago as he entered the courtroom for his arraignment. Dressed in street clothes, he was flanked by officers. Mangione faces 11 counts in New York, including 1 for first-degree murder and 2 counts for second-degree murder. Now, if found guilty of the top charge, he could get life in prison without parole. But he also faces a federal murder charge, which means that the death penalty is on the table if he is convicted. This morning, Mangione's lawyer spoke about her concern about her client's ability to get a fair trial. Take a listen.
He's a young man, and he is being treated like a human ping pong ball between 2 warring jurisdictions here. These federal and state prosecutors are coordinating with one another, but at the expense of him. They have conflicting theories in their indictments, and they are literally treating him like he is like some sort of political fodder, like some sort of spectacle.
And CNN's Kara Scannell was also inside that courtroom and joins us now. So, Kara, bring us up to speed in terms of how it all went down and what happened.
Yeah, the whole arraignment took just about 20 minutes. Mangione was led into the courtroom. As you could see, they're in plain clothes with his ankles and his wrists shackled. There was the shackling around his waist as well. He was surrounded during the entire hearing by a wall of by a wall of court officers. And during the hearing, Mangione spoke just once when he entered his plea of not guilty, but his lawyer did use the moment as an opportunity to raise some of these concerns that she has about there being federal charges, which he was indicted or he was charged with last week, and he had his first court appearance in that case on Thursday, and then the state charges where he was indicted on 11 felony counts. And today was his arraignment on those counts. So she had raised questions about the politicalization of this as well, pointing to the perp walk where Mangione got off that helicopter, walked down the long pier in New York City before he came to federal court on Thursday. She raised the issue that New York City's Mayor Eric Adams was there, saying that he was politicizing this, even quoting from some of him, while also saying that Adams himself should know something about the presumption of innocence because he is facing federal bribery charges. Adams has pleaded not guilty to those charges. So this was the first, appearance that Mangione's had in state court. They scheduled another appearance for February, but there was an issue here too about where he will be in custody, whether he will stay in federal custody or if he will be in state custody. The judge asking the prosecutor, who's a 30-year veteran of the office, who has primary custody of this defendant, and he said he believed the state does, but he said it was something that they had just gotten permission to take him out of federal custody for this hearing, so the judge telling him they need to figure out where Mangione is going to be housed as this case moves forward, both on a state track and on the federal track. Mangione is expected to be back in federal court in January for his arraignment on those charges. Rahel?
And Kara, speaking of where he's housed and where he is currently, what do we know about the conditions of the jail where Mangione is currently being detained?
So Mangione is held at the federal jail in Brooklyn, New York, the Metropolitan Detention Center. It has a reputation as a notorious jail that has poor conditions, that has some judges don't even want to put some defendants there as part of their sentence. It's one of the most notorious jails in the country. It's one of the most dangerous federal jails in the country and the current home of suspected shooter Luigi Mangione, who is facing a federal murder charge for allegedly gunning down the United Healthcare CEO on the streets of Manhattan. Inmate number 52503-511. Mangione is housed in a facility described by one judge as having dangerous, barbaric conditions and an environment of lawlessness.
All prisons are miserable places to be, but boy, the MDC is maybe the most miserable of all the federal facilities that I've been in. It is dark, it is overcrowded, it's loud, it's too hot in the summer, it's too cold in the winter.
Violence, contraband, and drugs plague the facility on the edge of Brooklyn that has housed some of the highest profile defendants in the federal system.
I feel really, really bad and regretful.
Among them, crypto king Sam Bankman-Fried, embattled music mogul Sean Diddy Combs, and Jeffrey Epstein's former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. Mangione will likely be isolated given his notoriety. A spokesman for MDC Brooklyn tells CNN, for privacy, safety, and security reasons, we do not comment on the conditions of confinement for any incarcerated individuals, including housing assignments. More than 1,100 people, male and female, are currently housed in MDC's notorious cells and dorm-style barracks.
It's bad enough that various federal judges have actually given reduced sentences or given defendants bail because of the conditions inside the MDC.
In 2019, during a polar vortex, over 1,600 inmates were locked in their cells, some with frigid temperatures, inadequate blankets, and toilets that wouldn't flush, according to a lawsuit, resulting in a $10 million settlement with inmates.
We determined that heating issues had been a long-standing problem at the jail.
In August of this year, the director of the Bureau of Prisons created an urgent action team to support the warden there and fill staffing shortages.
They are certainly riveted with a staffing crisis, which I think is a major driver of some of the issues that are bubbling up out of that institution.
But in September, the DOJ announced 5 inmates were charged in 2 separate murders of other inmates. A 6th was charged with attempted murder for allegedly stabbing another inmate 44 times with a makeshift weapon. Another inmate was sent to the hospital with an ice pick stuck in his back. A multi-agency sweep of the facility in October found a number of electronic devices, drugs and associated paraphernalia, and homemade weapons. And illegal cell phones are common. Federal prosecutors accused alleged gang members of taking photos from inside their cells, posing and showing off their tattoos. Inmates are not the only criminal offenders. In June, a corrections officer at the jail was sentenced for accepting more than $20,000 in bribes to smuggle drugs, cigarettes, and cell phones to inmates, according to the Department of Justice. Now, if Mangione stays at the MDC, that's the kind of conditions he'll be in. But if he is transferred into state custody, he'll go to the city's jail. That's Rikers Island, a jail that itself has its own reputation for being dangerous and notorious. Rahel?
Kara Scannell, appreciate the reporting. Thank you. Let's now bring into the conversation Court TV and former federal prosecutor Julie Grant. Julie, welcome.
Rahel, welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So it's not often that we see cases like the Luigi Mangione case that really capture national attention. Your thoughts on that, and what does it say about sort of where we are right now?
Sure, Rahel. It's a sad state of affairs when this morning, when we're getting ready for this arraignment to happen in state court in Manhattan, and everyone's preparing. You see security outside of the courthouse. You see the microphone set up for the press conference, and you hear cheering from people, cheering for a murder suspect. People have been very vocal and wanting to be vocal, unafraid, people wanting to show their support for this man. This is something really stunning because we know that homicides sadly happen far too often in America. And here, when you have a high-profile victim like Brian Thompson and the way in which this was done, so bold, so brazen, some people are hailing this guy as a hero. And then it brings up a whole host of other legal issues as we move forward, Rahel, when we think about the 3 different cases that this guy has to deal with, 2 in New York, 1 in Pennsylvania, and whether or not we're even going to see a fair trial. So I think what we're seeing is stunning on some level. It's also somewhat of a wake-up call, I think, of where the climate is in America. But, you know, we have ways of going about things when we want to affect change, as you know, Rahel. And taking one's life, taking the law into one's hands, it's against the law. It's heinous, it's cruel, it's cold-blooded. That's what these allegations are. And so Luigi Mangione essentially made himself, you know, from a superstar Ivy League student to somebody who may never, ever see the light of day.